Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. It's a very special edition of the show with myself, Patrick Daugherty, and Denny Carter. We are live. Normally, the show is like super heavily edited. Like we have producer Adam sort through like thousands of takes, kind of like you would do with Pro Tools and like a pop song. We're like, ditch that, ditch that, ditch that. I don't want to be heard in public saying that, ditch that. We have no safety net today.
Right.
We are live. We're answering your questions. I would say you could ask us anything, but our friends at Reddit, I would also prefer that they don't sue us. I believe they probably have trademarked that, but you can ask us anything on Thursday, June 24th. Best ball season is raging. Redraft season is kind of slowly beginning to come into focus. You're going to have all sorts of questions. And as we wait for questions to begin rolling in on the quote YouTube, the hashtag YouTube, we had some user questions from online, Denny. There's a thing called social media. There's this user named Luke Morrison. He wanted to know, could Denny list some of the players who, if we draft, he would consider it already over?
Already over.
It's already over. You gave me a list. There's one he's a 3-letter acronym. The number one player that you consider things already over if you take him. I could who is it, Denny? If you take this player, this wide receiver, who your draft is already over, who is it?
I wanted to thank everyone for joining the chat. We have never been more live, and I appreciate everybody jumping in. Don't ask anything, ask everything is what we'll say to avoid litigation. MHJ, I think is the first player. When I see his ADP, basically you have to take him in the third round. In a 12-team league. And I just say no. I just say so no one remembers last year. And this is amazing because I feel like the drafting community, the fantasy community, is super sharp compared to even 5 years ago, especially 10 years ago. We were cavemen comparatively 10 years ago. So we see this rookie come in. He gets no separation per the metrics. He makes no difficult catches. He's slow. He's inefficient. And we say, yes, please. I want more of that. And I guess it's because he has bigger biceps now.
We'll say, don't forget, he's now much thicker and slower. And that's going to help. Sophomore season
Much thicker, much slower. So and there's a target black hole on the team named Trey McBride. Like it's not like he's not competing for targets. He has fierce competition for targets with McBride in the fold. So I don't really understand what's going on with his ADP. Everybody is a value at some point. And when I see Marvin Harrison Jr. going, in the third round of 12-team leagues, I say absolutely not. Maybe the fifth round, I guess, is where I would be looking, not the third.
Denny has a litany of players who will instantly end your draft if you take them. We'll get to more of them if we have time, but your questions are rumbling in. Some of them are very lore-based. JM wondering if it's Mason Tipton season yet in New Orleans. And Denny, also, this one's not a football question. We won't spend a ton of time on this one from Mr. Pat Mel, but he's hearing rumblings that Denny will be sporting the robe on a Friday show. I have no idea what this is, nor do I want to know what it is. But apparently Patrick Mel wants to know.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just real quick, for folks who are joining in, who know about my Friday afternoon Q&As on the NFL and NBC YouTube channel during the season only. Sometimes when it gets chilly in October, November, December, I put on this certain navy blue sweater. It's a sweater.
It's a robe. I remember this now.
And people say, "Oh, hey, you're doing the Hugh Hefner bit again. You look like Hugh Hefner. You just need to be chomping on a cigar and have a glass of champagne in your hand, and you look like Hugh Hefner." And I'm not trying to be Hugh Hefner. I'm trying to be a guy who's nice and cozy with a nice sweater. And it's not a robe. And Pat, furthermore, I have never worn a robe, nor will I ever wear a robe.
I own a robe, and I wear it about once or twice a year. It's usually because my kids are in our closet and like, "Dad, what's this? Can you put it on?" I'm like, "No."
Is it on Christmas morning?
Yeah, no. Christmas morning, I do not like to admit this about my family. I'm very private. I don't like to share these kind of embarrassing. We have become a matching Christmas jammies family. A matching Christmas jammies.
Well, you know what? We can have producer Adam edit that out.
Yeah, there's a moose motif on these matching Christmas jammies. We bought them in the Great North, Quebec. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. We have heard of football. We're here to talk about football. a longtime viewer, Will Garrettson, sorry, Will, butchering your last name. He's in a 12-team PPR league. He's thinking about the 7 spot. He's thinking about getting an alpha wide receiver at the 7 spot. Puka Nacua is plausibly available there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is plausibly available there. Both could go earlier. Neither are going to go much later. If you were on the clock at 7, you have your druthers, and both Puka and ARSB are there. Who you're taking? What is your initial inclination?
That's brutal. I've since this was pulled up for us to read, I've been kind of rolling it around in my mind, and I still don't have like a hard and fast answer. I guess I would lean Puka just because of the role in the LA offense. But the role of Amon-Ra St. Brown in the Detroit offense is pretty great. And we mentioned a couple weeks ago that if there is sort of a backsliding for the Lions in 2025, finally Pat and I will be right after 3 years of being wrong about the Lions. But that would generally mean probably more dropbacks for Jared Goff, more attempts, and that means probably more targets for guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. So I can definitely see taking St. Brown there. I would lean Puka mostly because his targets per route run is just so crazy. It's like 40%.
It's insane.
And it's like I just don't know. I can't look at that and be like, I'll take someone else.
Friend of the show, Brad Beatson. Sorry, Brad, I've never said your last name out loud. Does remind the Sun God recovering from a minor knee procedure. So that's one of the reasons his ADP is probably a couple of spots lower than Puka. I will split hairs here and say I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has probably already had his best real life season.
Yeah.
But I think what could happen is that Puka Nacua has a truly special real life season. But then Amon-Ra St. Brown has an even better fantasy season for the reasons you laid out, where it's like, dude, like Amon-Ra, it's like we're going into week 18 and Amon-Ra St. Brown has 132 catches. Like he's flirting for the single season receptions record that Michael Thomas holds, or now that, Cooper Kupp holds. And I think there could be like this weird distinction there between them, but I'm still going to lean Puka. I feel like we're going to see, I think within Puka's range of outcomes is one of the greatest receiver seasons we've ever seen. Partly because of how talented he is, what he's been building towards, but also this offense just kind of produces that kind of season. Matthew Stafford has tended to produce that kind of season. 2 of the greatest receiving seasons in NFL history were Calvin Johnson with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp with Matthew Stafford. Yeah. And I just feel like if he can stay healthy, we're going to get that kind of year from Puka.
There are the injury issues. I mean, we've still never seen Puka Nacua go to the ground and get up immediately. So that's always concerning. Pat, for you, does the addition of Davante Adams mix in here at all?
Nope. He's done. Don't care.
You think he's done?
No, he's not done. But the thing is, you go.
Well, he's a massive upgrade over Cooper Kupp.
Is he? That is where I don't know. Well, I guess almost anyone's an upgrade over the version of Cooper Kupp we saw last year, where it almost appeared like he was on his last legs. I mean, Davante Adams is now 33. But the one reason they can both have great seasons, but there's no question who's like the alpha at this point. I mean, I guess maybe there's some question.
No, there's no question.
It's such a narrow offense. It's always been a narrow offense. I think Davante can still have 12 or 1,300 yards and still not even come that close to like the fantasy points Puka's putting up. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's way too bullish.
Yeah.
Both can get there, like relative to their ADPs. The upside with Puka, like he's one of the highest outcome players in all of fantasy football this year. Not just his position, not just his part on the board. Like he could be like the most important player in fantasy football in 2025. And I just don't think Davante Adams has that kind of upside, nor do I think like his presence could be bad news for Puka. If anything, it could be good news. I'm going to make the Galaxy Brain argument. It's actually good.
It's good that the ball's going somewhere else.
In the history of the league is opposite Puka Nacua. It's very, very good. We have a lot of good questions here. Slanted and Enchanted, nice pavement reference, another friend of the show. He is wondering, is it time to maybe reevaluate the number of set starters in our home leagues or redraft leagues, Denny? It's pretty much 9 with 1 flex or 2 flexes. Do you have any strong feelings on this? Or I got an honestly just glory in the variety from league to league where I want the settings to be wildly different from league to league. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is becoming more the norm where it's no longer just 9 and a flex. But do you have any strong feelings on what like the ideal layout should be for a home league?
I like, of course, PPR scoring because it's the only legitimate scoring. But I like 2 flexes. I feel like that allows the best players in your fantasy league to sort of rise to the top because you're not just filling in the gaps. You're not just drafting for immediate need. Like, oh, like I need to fill in my 3rd wide receiver. I'm going to go ahead and do that, even though there's like a great running back value on the board, So good drafters and folks who like pay, like really grind and pay attention, I think benefit from the more players you have starting in your lineup. So adding that second flex, I think is good. I feel the most comfortable in leagues that have 2 flexes.
I just feel most comfortable in general in fantasy football with anything that expands the player pool. And that's always been one big problem with fantasy football versus fantasy baseball for me is there were like critical swaths of like the real life skill core that were not making it onto the fake digital gridiron. And PPR helped really change that. Second flexes have really helped change that. And just in general, I'm in favor of anything in a game that is so reliant, like where you're not reliant, it's not the right word, that where you're so at the mercy of injuries. I want like a deeper player pool just so you have more options. And anything that deepens the player pool.
Yeah,
it's really good with me.
You know why? I know this probably doesn't check out for folks who like really love like real football and like want fantasy to reflect real football. But I think it's kind of fun and cool to be able to throw in a pass catching running back into that second flex who, he's going to get 3 carries in the game, but he could score 12 PPR points because he's going to catch 4 or 5 passes in the right kind of game script. So that's the sort of thing that it makes the game more interesting to me.
Couldn't agree more. Like PPR, I would say the single biggest effect has been on running back more than receiver, obviously.
Yeah.
And it was just a totally necessary adjustment in an era where the bell cow isn't extinct, but is just kind of in the middle of a long extinction. And despite the outliers, I just think it's still only heading in one direction. And the bell cow is going to become more and more endangered. Slanted and Enchanted, by the way, says Christmas Jammy fam, rise up. Could not agree more. We have a few more format questions. We'll just get to these. David wants to know why aren't more leagues starting a second QB or adding a super flex spot? Could need an executive order to that effect. And this is another reason why I love 2 QB leagues. I will say 2 QB leagues cannot be bigger than 12 teams. 14, 12 is pushing it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But 14, it all just becomes about a quarterback land grab, and it warps the league and scoring to like an unhealthy degree. 12, you're kind of getting in that territory. To be honest, if you're like having trouble filling a league and you're stuck on 10 teams, one way to make it way more fun and competitive is to make sure it's 2 QB, not just super flex. You should make that straight up 2 QB. But yeah, Denny, I mean, are you in favor of 2 QB super flex? Another reason I love it is that I don't know, maybe the most important position in American sports should actually be important in fantasy.
Right. So it does depend on your feelings about, do you want the on-field product to be reflected in the fantasy product, and to each his own on that. I will say though, if you're in a league with savvy players who are really into it and do their homework, 2 QB makes more sense to me. If you're in an office league with just some folks who just want to have fun and have something to talk about on Monday morning in the office, don't do 2 QB. It's too much. It's too much. You're asking way too much of people to be like, I need to draft 3 viable quarterbacks to be able to plug in throughout the season and balance my bye weeks and injuries and everything. So know your league mates. But I am in favor of giving some value to quarterback, because honestly, quarterback's like basically worthless in one quarterback league. It
is insane. I truly like barely even worry about it.
Yeah, I was like,
I will say that has changed a little bit, where we've been getting more outlier seasons because it began with Cam Newton, and then guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts have kind of changed the game. Lamar Jackson, of course, where you're getting more guys kind of separating themselves from the pack, but still has not caught up to running back and receiver in terms of importance. Another longtime viewer of the show, PBD OTC, wants to know if a 50-yard field goal, which is typically worth 5 points, should be worth more than a passing TD, 4 points. Denny, what do you think?
I never thought about it that way, but seems wrong.
Does seem wrong.
Seems
It does seem wrong. It does
seems
seem
like it
wrong.
should be illegal, like on a federal level. But yeah, I don't know how else you would do that though. I think that the longer the field goal, the more points are deserved. Like you should not get the same
I agree
amount of
with
points
that
for
for
a
sure.
30 yarder as a 55 yarder. You know what I mean? So I think decimal scoring is important here because for like a 55 yarder, you get 5.5 points, and so I guess I understand the opposition to it. As a kicker truther, I'm more inclined to say, just learn to deal with it. Learn to live with this reality.
If you're going to have kicker, reward them for being good and make it so it's not totally random. So there's more of a difference between the kickers. And when you reward the guys with the big legs, you do reduce some of the volatility. You do reduce some of the randomness. Like, does the team actually trust this guy to attempt 50-yard field goals? So I actually do, even though it creates warped outcomes like that, I do agree with distance kicks being worth more than shorter kicks. Billy's wondering about something we've talked about in the pod a few times this spring. It's kind of ever changing. And just how excited are we for Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields, who, as he points out, are actually running back a college connection. Maybe that's being underplayed, Mr. Denny Carter. And is Wilson inspired to not quit football forever by Aaron Rodgers, a guy who wanted nothing to do with Garrett Wilson, now being on to Pittsburgh, and Justin Fields, a guy playing for his career. Like, he's on a year-to-year basis now as a starter, was arguably lucky to even get this chance to be a starter. I framed it this way before on the show, but can Justin Fields go DJ Moore mode with Garrett Wilson?
Right. And I think importantly, when you asked that question on last week's show about, can Garrett Wilson have the sort of season DJ Moore had with Justin Fields under center, I think that you then refuted that by saying DJ Moore is a very different kind of player than Garrett Wilson, a guy who can create on his own, who can definitely create after the catch, who is probably more versatile. I don't think Garrett Wilson is a wide receiver 1. In the NFL, I think he's a really good, solid wide receiver 2 on most teams. So that I'm just a little iffy on him. What is he going? Wide receiver 12, 13 right now?
He's right on the cusp. He is currently the wide receiver 14.
So, and then there's the issue of a Justin Fields offense is a run heavy offense, and the Jets can't stop talking about 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. So I'm having a hard time coming around on Garrett Wilson, but hey, you know what? The locker room, the shower narrative, as our friend Adam Leviton has pointed out, between players who have known each other, who played on different teams in college, whatever, that is something that is very hard to measure as far as fantasy and fantasy drafting. So that could play a factor here, and it's just hard to quantify. But I think Wilson is slightly overdrafted right now. It's not crazy though.
I do think he's slightly overdrafted, and I made an imperfect comparison earlier by saying, can he have a DJ Moore season with Justin Fields? And I'll make another imperfect comparison where Garrett Wilson just could be settling into the Terry McLaurin zone, where early in his career, we had really high hopes for him. He had a few really promising seasons where, like, the next step always seemed like it was just a game or two away.
Right.
Basically, he's going to level up into an alpha wide receiver 1. And that we might need to accept that is not coming at this point, but that if you are happy, if you just adjust your expectations and you just know you're getting maybe a rich man's Terry McLaurin, very, very good wide receiver 2. Better, more palatable is probably a wide receiver 16 or 17.
Yeah.
Wide receiver 13 or 14. But
yeah,
I do think I'm not worried about Justin Fields like causing Garrett Wilson to descend a level. I do agree with you that ascending a level probably is not the most likely outcome.
Yeah. I would also say if Garrett Wilson does not fix his jersey, I'm going to have problems with him because that he has the single worst jersey look. It's the single worst jersey aesthetic in the league, and that's saying something.
JM, who's been viewing the whole show, does point out, this is our fear with the Jets, that, listen, Aaron Glenn, the Lions passed a ton last year, but we just know they didn't want to do that. We know Aaron Glenn got used to his team having success with a 2 running back approach in Detroit. I'm still skeptical it's ultimately going to be a 2 or 3 running back approach, but I do this. We've asked each other, like, who's even the Jets' number 2 weapon? And the answer is probably going to be there isn't one, and it doesn't matter. And that it's just going to be Garrett Wilson. So that's another thing working in Garrett Wilson's favor is there's not anyone really to siphon targets.
I will say, lost in all this Jets talk is that Justin Fields, to me, I think Kyle said on last week's show, and I agree with him, is like a slam dunk pick. If you're not going with the Lamars and Josh Allen's, you drop down a level and just wait for Justin Fields. You don't need to stack them. And I'm just talking about best ball purposes. Obviously, for redraft, you're not focusing on stacking too much, but you just get so much rushing potential out of that guy. I'm in again on Justin Fields.
Justin Fields is basically what I think fantasy managers thought they were getting with Anthony Richardson the past 2 years, where Anthony Richardson's ADP was always just like a little too high for a guy with no track record, where Justin Fields, it's a mixed track record, but it's a legitimate track record. And this year, where he's not going to be looking over his shoulder, where he's going to be able to like play Fields ball for better or worse, might not be great in real life, but in fantasy, I think the ADP is around QB 10. I mean, the odds of him overperforming that are so
he's such a good, not only does he rush a lot, so he has the volume on his side, he's such a good rusher when you look at like yards after contact, like yards he creates on his own, basically. It's just off the chart. It's better than anybody. It's better than any quarterback besides Taysom Hill, unfortunately.
Digo, sticking with quarterback conversation, he thinks quarterbacks as deep as it's been as a long time. He asks, is it a good year to be the last one to take a quarterback in your draft? Denny would say it's always a good year to take the last quarterback in your draft. I would be inclined to agree. I will push back a little bit on quarterbacks never been deeper. Well, I don't know. It's pretty beginning here at QB 14. QB 13 is Dak Prescott. Then it's Jared Goff, Drake May, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love. It's a little dicier here. JJ McCarthy, who's never played. Trevor Lawrence, CJ. Okay, he's right. It's as deep as it's been. And for Tua's the QB 22. Matthew Stafford's the QB 24. It's about as deep as it's been in many, many, many years, Denny. But would you just say it's always a good year to be the last one to take a quarterback in your draft?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think so. Last year, I felt better about the quarterback board because of Jaden Daniels going so late, and that to me, where everybody's chasing Anthony Richardson, which we didn't quite understand that at all, really. But Jaden Daniels was just sitting there. There's nobody like that. And that only comes around once in a while. That came around with Lamar Jackson the first year.
It comes around every 2 or 3 years, I'd say.
2 or 3? I don't know. I was going to say
3 or
6,
4.
but
all right.
Who knows? That's the analytics of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't really see that guy. I guess maybe it would be Drake May.
No. You remember who the guy is? We've already made this point on the show. He's around QB 25. Who's the guy this year? Not a true dual threat. He's not a dual threat really at all.
Oh. Is it Tua?
No, Cameron Ward.
Oh, it is Cam Ward.
Cam Ward. He's QB 25. That's very low. Strikes me as quite low.
All right. So Cam Ward, Justin Fields was not a runner in college, right? And if you even were to have suggested that when he was coming into the league, you were smacked down immediately. He's never run. He doesn't even know how to run. He's just a drop back passer. You're like, no, you're ridiculous. Like, of course he's going to run. Cam Ward he's going to run. I know he didn't do it in college. I know it's a totally different thing. These guys get in the NFL. They do 1 read and 2 reads and they take off. And that's all right for fantasy. I don't know about real football. Titans will probably stink, but for fantasy, we'll take that. And I think Cam Ward's going to run a lot more than people think.
I do think he'll run more than expected for a few just kind of like practical real life reasons. Not necessarily that he's got some like hidden rushing talent we don't really know about. But he's got the playmaking gene that you want in every fantasy quarterback, where this could be a really imperfect comparison, but almost maybe like an early career Ben Roethlisberger. It was like, I don't know how I'm going to make a play, but I'm going to make a play on this play. And I do think Cam is going to take off definitely more than expected and almost certainly more than he did at Miami and Wazoo, as it's known by the Zoomers, Washington State. Billy wants to know, is Tony Pollard an underrated running back in drafts right now with Cam Ward, the aforementioned Cam Ward?
Right.
Maybe the offense is not dysfunctional. Tony Pollard is currently the RB28. Tajay Spears is right there by him. Oh, he's fallen actually a little bit. RB41. Is Pollard underrated, or is there still just not enough daylight between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears to call him over or underrated one way or another?
Well, Pollard was finally back last year. The year before, still recovering from that leg injury that he suffered the year before that. He seemed all the way back. He seemed to be the preferred option as the RB1 over Spears for whatever reason. I think Spears is probably better, but we don't control that. We have to go by what the coaching staff thinks and does and says, right? So I would guess that Pollard will have every chance to be the RB1 here. I know that ESPN's let's see, ESPN reported back in April.
ESPN, who is a person.
Right, I was gonna. I forget who they reported. I think Cameron Wolf, maybe Cameron Wolf reported that there will be lots of short passing. That's the thought, at least, for this offense, for this Titans offense. That would figure to benefit a guy like Tony Pollard. So I think Pollard makes sense to me if you have gone wide receiver, tight end heavy up top, and you're just sort of messing around in what's usually called the running back dead zone, right? And it has a negative connotation, but often we find some nice little gems in the dead zone. I could see Pollard being one.
Yeah, Billy makes an important point that the offense dysfunctional was a proper word for the 2024 Titans offense. It's not exactly going to be a well-oiled machine this year. They still have depth issues. They still have like a weak wide receiver one by wide receiver one standards. But Cam Ward just elevates the entire situation. And it's a classic rising tide that's going to be lifting just about every boat. And if you believe Tony Pollard is better than Tajay Spears, which I think the Titans coaching staff believes, and summer fantasy drafters definitely believe, RB28 could be an ADP that's overperformed. Maybe not by like a drastic amount. Like he's not going to be like knocking down the door into the top 12 or 13, but he could be getting into the top 20. Maybe like that James Conner zone, RB18 to RB22. We have a lot of good questions. Keep them coming. If there's a good one there, I've got it in the hopper to answer. Keep the faith. Keep them coming. JM, who's been with us the entire show, he wants to know, bigger fell for it again guy in 2025, Kyler Murray or Jalen Waddle? Jalen Waddle, who had such a promising rookie season, so much volume, just has not been able to match it since then, is the undisputed champion of limping off the field after every catch, or Kyler Murray, who had such an amazing rookie season back in 2019, Denny, and then has had the exact same season every year since then. His stats last year, truly almost identical to his rookie year marks. Who's the bigger fell for it again guy in 2020?
That's a tough one. Many are saying that Jalen Waddle has not been the same since I did the Waddle dance in front of him at the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Oh my God. That's a memory. I'm not even kidding. That's a memory I had suppressed.
Yeah, no, I can't suppress. I've tried to suppress and I can't.
Then he quote, hit the Waddle.
I hit the Waddle.
And everyone emptied out of Super Bowl Radio Row in disgust.
And Lawrence Jackson has it on tape.
He's promised to never quote release the tapes.
No, I'm begging him, do not release the tapes. So that's maybe my fault, but I hate to say this in front of Pat of all people, the biggest Kyler hater of all time. I'm kind of in on Kyler.
No, stop. All right.
Because
Kyler, who never gets any better, and you just said his number one receiver. It's the ultimate. You will instantly lose your league if you take him.
It's not about that, man. It's about the rushing. And so,
the rushing, don't overdo it. 4 touchdowns. Oh my God.
The last couple of years, it's been like 4.5 rushes per game. Back in 2020, when he was the QB2 overall, folks forget, behind Josh Allen, he was rushing over 8 times a game. And we have now 3 blurbs, I believe, over the past 3 months, with Kyler talking about, I need to rush more, I need to run more, we need to do more design running stuff. The question is Kyler actually fast, or do his feet just move quickly? This is a question I have. But more rushing would be obviously the difference between his kind of blah seasons and a really good one.
I would say he's a rich man's Russell Wilson as a runner, where he kind of runs in similar situations. Unlike Russ, he doesn't look like a grandpa when he's running. He actually does elude defenders. But also like Russ, he's not getting his number called in the red zone, which is where there's a difference between a dual threat quarterback and then a red zone threat quarterback. Kyler is never going to have that because of his size and now his injury history. He had 11 touchdowns on the ground in 2020. Since then, he's never had more than 5. That includes last year where he did run a lot more relative to the past few seasons. I just think those offseason comments are classic. Once regular season reality sets in, once the weekly grind sets in, he's going to determine very quickly, actually, I'm not going to die running. And that seems like a classic fun thing to say in June that will not be borne out during the regular season. But I'm admittedly guessing and projecting.
Tyler in the chat has a point. The problem with Kyler Murray is that he is a terrible passer. And he always has, like, he's never been a good passer.
No, never.
I don't really know why he chose football over baseball.
I don't either, because baseball is. You think being an NFL quarterback is hard? The only thing harder is being like a baseball anything. And like baseball now, you have to be basically willing to be like an Ivy League level student. You have to be like studying your swing path or your pitch mix, like literally, like not just every game, every day, but like pitch by pitch, inning by inning. Like Kyler already doesn't seem like he wants to read all that in the NFL. I think he would be driven to actual madness in modern baseball. And this is Emo Tyler, by the way, big time friend of the show, big time social media pal. I had a final thought on Kyler, but it's just not going to happen. No, Kyler too. Remember the narrative of Kyler? If they could just get a receiver, and then every year, like, well, wait a minute, he did have a receiver. And like, I feel like it's never his fault. It's somehow Marvin Harrison is going to be the classic. He's cut or traded ahead of year 4. And then he's just like instantly takes off because he's with someone who's not named Kyler Murray. So let's see here. I'm going to be sorting through the questions. We had another good one here I got to get back to. Oh, we have several good ones I need to get back to. Tyler says, never forget the waddle dance. I would say instantly forget the waddle dance.
You can't forget it.
Digo was going back to the quarterback conversation we were having a few minutes ago. I guess he got Dak for $1 in a 2 QB league auction.
That's insane.
That is insane, especially in a 2 QB league. But I'll say on Dak, QB 13. I don't know, man. He's going behind Caleb Williams. He's going behind Brock Purdy. He's going behind Bo Nix, Kyler Murray. Like, if Dak Prescott plays all 17 games, what do you think his floor is? I would say his floor is probably QB 9.
I was actually going to say 9. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason. I get it. Like, it's boring. Like, you're not drafting the QB1 overall. So what? So like you can get him so late in drafts because I'm gonna have
I'm gonna have Dak in so many leagues.
Yeah, he misses a lot of time. I get that.
Sure, he's never satisfying to watch play either.
No, don't watch. Never watch. Except for when he's on NBC, when he's on Sunday Night Football,
which we're assuming will be frequently
6 times this year. And George Pickens makes a big difference here. It actually means that we could get some what we call splash plays. So Dak won't have to pick his way down the field with checkdowns. He can actually just get it all on one play because George Pickens is maybe the best contested ball guy in the entire league.
And the splash plays are going to come not only via George Pickens, but the defensive attention he frees up for CeeDee Lamb. We're like, say what you will about George Pickens, maybe an overrated player, definitely kind of overrated in fantasy. He's not overrated to deep defensive backs who are terrified of him either getting by them or, like you said, dominating them in a contested catch situation. And he should make life a lot easier for CeeDee Lamb. Andrew wants to know, it's a 14-man PPR tight end premium league. Do you want Drake London or George Kittle? And earlier I was going to say, no offense to Andrew, the only thing I don't like to expand the player pool is tight end premium.
Yeah,
it is an abomination. It is against nature.
Yes,
it is against whatever God that may be out there for you. But Drake London is the wide receiver 9. George Kittle is the tight end 3. Andrew's in a 14-man tight end premium. What say you, Denny?
Yeah, tight end premium is basically like we're going to give special emphasis to the worst position in fantasy football.
Yes.
Maybe in all of fantasy sports. We'll see.
We're talking even catcher in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, right. It's worse than that.
Andrew hits us with an LOL, by the way.
I hate it. I hate tight end premium, but I actually would go Kittle here. Just, the tight end premium you're talking about. So Kittle with tight end premium scoring, basically could probably win you like 3 weeks single-handedly. When game script goes the right way or the wrong way, depending on how you look at it. And the pass volume is there for the Niners. I think Purdy will be much better this year for reasons I've outlined on other shows, on other Rotoworld football shows. So I would go Kittle here, but it's close.
Lots of really good questions. And by the way, Andrew Bernard, thank you for the kind words. Denny, we have Cocky Kane, Miami Hurricanes, Cam Ward. The Canes, they're feeling themselves this year. They're getting increasingly more relevant every year. He wants to know JSN or Ladd McConkey. The current ADPs, Mr. Denny Carter. For Ladd is wide receiver 11. Boy, is that real high. And JSN, wide receiver 19. Two guys who are definitely level up candidates this year, but in two very different situations. We're expecting more of a run-heavy approach for Seattle.
Right.
Especially in the ADP context, do you prefer wide receiver 11, Ladd McConkey, wide receiver 19, Jackson Smith and Jigba?
I mean, I
bet that might narrow.
I'd still say Ladd McConkey is probably the better. By the way, his real name is Andrew. Did you know that?
No, wow, he made a good choice. You got to stand out in this world.
The whole thing, we talked about this a couple weeks ago about putting Cooper Kupp in the slot and bumping JSN out wide this year. That's concerning. I'm sorry, but that flew under the radar a little bit. But that has me thinking very strongly about whether I can draft JSN at all, because JSN was really super inefficient as a boundary receiver. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I believe those reports. I believe that's what the Seahawks intend to do. I also believe that once the games actually start, are they really going to sacrifice JSN in the slot, probably their most effective weapon, at the altar of putting Cooper Kupp in the slot? I just have a hard time believing that once the games actually begin, JSN's just going to be glued to the outside.
Yeah.
But that is what they're saying.
Right. Sure. I would like to think that, but just based on what the beat writers are saying, what the team is implying, if this comes to fruition, and I guess this is a little hot takey, but I'll go with it. It's June. We need our hot takes even in June. We're not out of takes. I still have some.
We're not.
So you have if you have Cooper Kupp occupying the slot primarily, and you have JSN outside primarily throughout this season, Cooper Kupp could outscore JSN.
All right. Yeah. Never mind. We're out of takes. We're out of takes. Not in a million years.
Really?
Not in a million. Maybe if they paint the field red like they did at Eastern Washington, and Cooper Kupp thinks he's back in college. He is back in the Pacific Northwest. Not in a million years.
Have been.
Tyler's agreeing with you. What does the world come to?
Yeah. Look. You've been through it all with fantasy. You've seen it all. So in all of that you've seen, all the horrors that you've seen, you cannot conceive of Cooper Kupp outscoring JSN.
Because you know what I always see, Denny? Old guy stays old. Yeah. It's not even like a situation, too, where sometimes the old guy doesn't stay old at running back because for some reason they decide he's the goal line back and they average 3.3 yards per carry, but it comes with 11 or 12 rushing touchdowns. I just think old guy stays
all right.
old.
Okay. What if Cooper Kupp... So even if he stays healthy, you still think no, even if he stays healthy?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Here, turn off the mic. Yeah, we'll have Adam edit this part. Even if he stays healthy, no. To be honest, JSN was the ultimate. I was so out on him as a rookie and was very right, and then gradually got in on him. Now I will say I know the per play metrics for him on the outside and downfield were not great last year. But the few games I felt like where they really featured him in a more downfield capacity, he kind of made some huge explosive plays. Where I think that could almost be like a sample size fluke last year for JSN down the field. And he just seems like a player. He's an undersized guy. Maybe he wasn't quite ready for the league as a rookie, but I think he's been a pretty savvy operator. He's staying on the field. He seems like someone to me who's just going to get a little bit better each year. Or JSN has kind of become a negative drumbeat guy this year for a variety of reasons. I think we might look back on that and just be like, well, we always liked JSN. Why did we suddenly stop liking him heading into his third year?
Okay, can we agree, though, that Cooper Kupp will have more receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns in the Seahawks 2 games against the Rams this year?
We say that again? I was reading a very funny comment.
I said, can we agree that Kupp will outproduce JSN in their 2 games against the Rams?
And he goes without saying, wide receiver 1 overall, both those weeks. Although he'll miss one of those games with injury. The game he does play.
No, he won't. No, he will not. He will put on a robotic leg if necessary. He's going to the Seahawks specifically to play against the Rams because he's so mad. He is so upset that they just threw him to the curb.
It has been a while since someone was this upset, I will say. Tyler, by the way, pointed out the target cliff. You may not be familiar with the concept I created one time on a Pat Rain podcast, but we always talk about the touches cliff for running backs. The target cliff came a long time ago for Cooper Kupp. It's a very real thing where if you hit a certain number of targets, it's just over. And that happened for Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, that's what the spreadsheets say.
That is what the spreadsheets say. Okay, I'm sorting back through the questions here. We've got a few. Billy, Billy's been asking a lot of good questions. Is this one a good question, Denny? He's basically saying it's Brenton Strange season.
Oh yeah.
That he's a smash.
Yeah.
That they let Ingram go because they know they think the Strange can do what Ingram was doing. Pretty plausible argument, actually. Brenton Strange, who was a pretty great streamer, pretty great fill-in player last year. He is now getting his close-up in Jacksonville. He's not getting his close-up from Fantasy Manager still, only the tight end 20 in summer best ball drafts. Is he going to greatly exceed that ADP?
It's such a good value. I mean, Brenton Strange is going to be a guy that, like more casual players, fantasy players will have no idea who Brenton Strange is. And that's okay. You have your life. Okay. You're living your life. You don't have any time to learn who Brenton Strange is. That's okay. You're going to know. You're going to know in a hurry because he is going to occupy a full-time role. Liam Cohen, the head coach of the Jags, just today was complimenting Brenton Strange as a blocker. Now you may say, I don't play in a points per block league. And that, you know what, that's fair. Not everybody can handle themselves in those sort of formats. But what I'm saying, it's good. It's good because that means that he will get a lot of playing time. He will not be yanked on and off the field depending on situations. We don't like that with our tight ends. We want our tight ends to be running 70, 80, preferably 90% of the routes on the team's dropbacks. I think Strange has a clear path to that sort of role, and he's not bad. Like, he's not great, but he's not bad. So Brenton Strange has the profile of someone who could be an insta starter in 12-team leagues.
I do feel like Brenton Strange should be more in like the tight end 13 to 15 range, where there's Tucker Kraft, there's Dalton Kincaid, there's Dallas Goedert. I feel like he has fewer question marks than maybe almost all those guys, where maybe he should not be in the top 12, but I think he needs to be on that tight end 1-2 borderline. And I do think maybe as there's going to be people are going to want to be positive about the Jaguars. I think there's going to be like Liam Cohen's got this team looking great in training camp. And I think Brenton Strange is going to be an ADP riser. Sticking a tight end, JM wants to know full PPR. Kyle Pitts or the Conk father, the Conk daddy, as you may know him. Tyler Conklin is the tight end 34. Kyle Pitts is the tight end 18. Are basically things getting so bad that we're choosing the Conk daddy over Kyle Pitts? Jim Harbaugh, Los Angeles Chargers coach, seems to really have a thing for making the tight end position relevant in fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, so as much as I like the Conk father thing, I would actually lean Pitts here. I mean, I take no pleasure, obviously. But, Tyler Conklin, it has to compete for snaps and routes and targets with not only Will Dissly, but with a Grande Gaston Jr.
Yes.
Okay, who we talked about
summer hype all stars
last week, right? Grande Gaston Jr. looks amazing in shorts. So we'll see how that translates. I think Conklin could be in for a fight just to get on the field for the Chargers offense, whereas Pitts, for better or worse, he's just going to be on the field, sort of occupying space and pretending to run routes and be a viable target for Michael Penix. So you never know. You never know with Pitts. Although I do think Atlanta will be kind of run heavy to a point where I'm not sure if anybody but London can get there for fantasy. So we'll see.
We'll see. Atlanta's going to be a strange situation. A lot of unknown variables there. I was going to say Tyler Conklin could almost end up like a surprise, quote unquote, guy who ends up fighting for a roster spot, but they guaranteed him $2.8 million. Maybe Will Dissly is end up like a surprise cut, which would greatly enhance Tyler Conklin's fantasy viability. Because Rondé Gadsden, say what you will, we don't really know his position. He's the ultimate. Yep, they don't have pads on, so we certainly hope this guy looks good.
Yeah,
and he's looking good. There's a lot to go, I feel like, in this Chargers tight end core.
Yeah, and so think of Gadsden kind of like Mike Gesicki, where it's like he should be able to work, and Gesicki goes off once in a while when the Bengals have literally no one else to throw it to. He's that sort of player, but he is a player where you might get like 40% of the routes on a given Sunday.
Then I hate to say it looks like you have some legal trouble. JM was saying,
man.
Gaining for Kyle Pitts, he is fast tracking this one to the Supreme Court.
The major questions doctrine strikes again.
6-3 ruling against Denny coming down any day now. Digo is wondering, Derrick Henry, we've just accepted him as the the unstoppable force. He's never met an object he could not move. There is no immovable object for Derrick Henry. Age is truly only a number. Almost had the second 2,000-yard rushing season of his career last year. But 344 touches over the age of 30. 2,000 yards They're talking up Keaton Mitchell a little more. Justice Hill's established as a change of pace back. Not that we're actually worried about those guys, but we joked about the targets cliff. The carries cliff is actually real, unless you're Derrick Henry. Are you fading? Is it this time it counts when it comes to fading Derrick Henry this year, Denny? Or Derrick Henry, has he just earned the right? Like, if you go down with the Derrick Henry ship. You just draft him as if the decline is never coming. Where are you on Derrick Henry?
First of all, how dare you, Digo? Question whether Derrick Henry will be elite this year. Of course he'll be elite. He's Derrick Henry. He is optimized, okay? This guy works 365 days a year to be ready for game day. No one in the history of the game has worked harder to optimize their bodies and their minds for the game. He will be elite as long as he's playing. I really don't see a scenario where he just drops off. He was so good last year, and for a reason. Hey, sometimes the process pays off in fantasy. We talked last summer about the fact that the Ravens offensive line created so much room before contact, right? For its running backs the year before, whereas the Titans were at the bottom of the league in that category. Well, it really worked out last year because they continued to make room for Henry and he ran wild. There's no reason to think that won't happen this year. You when you're drafting Henry, though, you are capped because you are not getting the receptions. It's just never going to happen.
No, I absolutely hate to be capped at 2,000 yards rushing, but
well, I mean, in standard leagues, that it's
back-to-back ADPs here, Denny. The RB5 is Ashton Genty. The RB6 is Derrick Henry. 10.7 overall, 13.9 overall. Are we really taking Ashton Genty sight unseen over Derrick Henry? Is that a smart way to win your fantasy football league?
It is.
You think it is?
It is. It is.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. Genty is going to see as many touches as he can handle. He's going to be way more involved in the pass game in Vegas. I think if you need to see him, then you're going to lose out. And maybe you can just see him on in the preseason. Maybe if they have him playing then you can see him and then you can draft him. That's what I would say.
I do agree with the principle that sure, it would be nice to have seen this player play in the NFL, but that is not how it works. No. And that drafting players sight unseen is part of the game in fantasy football. Is Kenneth Walker III dust, and is it Charbonnet season? Denny, both of them have been a long history of kind of underperforming, but Kenneth Walker has done some more as a legit RB2, while Zach Charbonnet, a rhythm back, does not seem like he can really get going until he's like a guy getting all the touches, but it doesn't happen because of Kenneth Walker. Ken is the RB18, Charbonnet is the RB37. We tried to tackle this one a few times this spring, this summer. At ADP, which player would you rather have on your team right now?
Do you know Charbonnet's ADP right now?
It's RB37.
Okay. And Walker is
RB18.
I'd go with Walker.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I'm getting this year's Josh Jacobs vibes from Kenneth Walker, where it's like a take your vegetables pick that especially like the best ball bros don't want to make for understandable reasons, but touches are touches.
Yeah.
The signals coming out of Seahawks camp are unmistakable. They're going to feature the run. Kenneth Walker, I see no reason to believe they're going to feature Zach Charbonnet over Kenneth Walker. And it just kind of feels like this is an offense where you're going to want the lead back this year.
You definitely are. The Walker injury history is so frightening at this point that I actually would understand if folks just looked at that and said, I can't stomach that sort of thing. Because it's just a mile long and it's all sorts of things. It's not just soft tissue, it's knee, it's ankle, it's just everything. So I do understand that reticence to draft Walker. I would want Walker at RB18. The payoff could be tremendous there.
It could. And I think, part of it's already priced in on Walker. Where RB18, if he gets the role, we're really thinking, if they run the offense, we're really thinking RB18 would be a bargain. But I think some of that injury history there is priced in for Kenneth Walker. We got time for a few more questions if you want to get them in. Stevie, longtime friend of the show. You might think he's a fictional character. He's actually an internet friend. But Denny, apparently he asked you last year if you would name your next dog after Darnell Mooney after he outscored Kyle Pitts. And you thought he was joking, but can we get an update on the adoption of Darrell Wolfley?
Darnell Wolfley.
Darnell Wolfley. Did you follow through? Well, you apparently made a promise to Stevie.
I honestly, I'm going to need to see the tape on this because I am surprised that I laughed at that. I would have thought that I would have said, yeah, obviously Pitts will not outscore Darnell Mooney. But yeah, no, Darnell Wolfley's doing fine. He just ate. He's taking a nap. It's very hot outside, so he's not in for a walk today. But we'll take care of him.
Stevie is the kind of guy who I know keeps the receipts. He will DM them to me, and I will get them to you, Denny. Oh, wow. Tyler, he's been hanging around. He's been having a good chat with us. He wants to know, are we buying into another late-round Kansas City back and Brashard? Is it Brashard Smith? I believe it's Brashard Smith. Or is it time to eat our veggies with Mr. Eli Mitchell, who is now a Kansas City Chief? Or should Tyler go outside? It's June. Why is he talking about Kansas City backups? He's talking about them, presumably. He's probably in the middle of several best ball drafts.
Don't go outside. It's too hot. It's too hot. You stay in. You draft
so hot.
I can't stop sweating, Pat.
The heat dome.
I seriously thought I was going to pass out yesterday. I don't know. I'm so tired of this game. Like, I mean, Tyler is suggesting as much, but like this thing where we're like, if we can just identify the late round Kansas City Chiefs running back who will lead me to glory. It just doesn't happen. Like,
I actually do think it is going to happen, but the problem is I don't know how to identify it.
I mean, it's Kareem Hunt if it's anybody.
It could be Kareem Hunt again, which is like the classic fantasy scenario no one is prepared for. Like, no one wants. Like, well, there's no way it'll just be.
No
Kareem.
one wants that,
and it's instantly Kareem Hunt yet again.
And look. It just sometimes we have to accept that it doesn't, especially with running back, it doesn't matter if a guy is good or bad. It just matters if the coaches are willing to use him. And Kareem Hunt, for whatever reason, has the undying, unbreakable trust of Andy Reid, and that matters.
I will say I'm picking Brashard Smith, even though, I don't know, he could not make the team or something like that. But using the phrase sight unseen, I feel like I have seen enough of Elijah Mitchell, and talk about a long injury history.
Oh my God.
I guess there's untapped upside there that maybe Andy Reid could tap into, that Kyle Shanahan could not tap into. But this is one situation where I'm just betting on shiny new toy syndrome, the shiny new toy principle. Like, whatever. If I miss Eli Mitchell's breakout, you know what? So they tell me when I'm born, here are some of the things I'm going to witness. You're going to witness like 18 presidential, no, hopefully more than that. You're going to witness 24 presidential elections. You're going to witness Haley's Comet twice. And you're going to witness Elijah Mitchell's breakout. But guess what? You didn't take him in fantasy. I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah, whatever. I'm okay with that. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, he is, very tempting, because when he is healthy, and that's very few and far between, but he is super efficient and excellent. So, I get the temptation. I guess I just like Kareem Hunt as like the boring guy who might be the primary
Kareem Hunt. Very interesting. We will delete the tapes on that one. Super Shaq is the second person to complain about you saying there were ice winds in DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia. And now, like, you can't even touch your car without scalding your hand. What did you do?
I know I was rude to the ice winds back in February, March, and April, and May, and June. But I'm begging you to come back. So ice winds, if you're listening, listen. I kept telling you to go away. I said we're sick of you. We're sick of the coldest spring in the history of the DMV. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Okay, I did everything wrong. You did nothing wrong. Ice winds, come back.
No, it was the coldest spring in the history of St. Louis, too, I'll say. But true, I'm going to litigate this once and for all. I don't like being hot. Being hot is so much better than being cold. Please tell me you're not when you're sleeping. Don't hit me with when you're sleeping. Obviously, when you're sleeping, everyone wants it to be 62 degrees. But in general, please don't tell me you prefer being cold to being hot.
No. In fact, I've complained about it so much online over the years that one guy actually just replied to a post that said, buy a coat, bro. I wish I were kidding about this. One of my biggest innovations as an adult, and really only in the past 7 to 8 years, has been wearing a heavy coat. Like, I would just like I'm only walking from my car into the store. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm cold for 90
coat. Seconds or 60 seconds.
Put on the coat.
I became a heavy coat guy. It's life-changing. We're almost done here. We got time for another question too. Andrew Minton wants to know, this one's catnip for Denny. I almost feel like this question's a plant. Who will be better in fantasy this year? Bryce Young, who Denny apparently loves now, or Caleb Williams, who Denny's been calling a bust since the second he came onto planet Earth, let alone into the NFL.
Andrew, checks in the mail. So thank you for this one. No, I mean, come on. I'm not going to do a bit. It's obviously Caleb Williams. Like Caleb Williams is like by far the better fantasy.
Someone finally
option
said
here.
something nice about Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Finally, thank God.
Look. I wrote up the Bears offense for Rotoworld. If you'd like to check that out.
Our team preview series, check it out. That's been rolling. It's really good stuff.
So Caleb just didn't have any easy throws last year, and especially middle of the field throws. Jared Goff led the NFL both in the rate of middle of the field throws and EPA on dropbacks where he threw to the middle of the field. Caleb Williams was at the bottom of the league in those categories. So that makes a difference. And also Caleb was top 7, top 6 in rushing attempts among quarterbacks. Like, we can get there. We can get there. Bryce Young. Okay. The reason I'm excited for Bryce Young is not because I'm taking Bryce Young in every league. No, of course not. Maybe in 2 QBs or whatever, but no, not as a 1 QB guy. I'm excited because it makes the Carolina offense operational. It makes it viable for fantasy. It makes the guys in that offense interesting. Okay. That's why I'm in on the Bryce Assance, which of course Pat denies.
I do deny, but that's a good way to put it, Bryce, where that's the good out. That is maybe not the best case scenario, but that is more what we're looking for with Bryce, not him being a viable streamer, because no one's saying he's going to be a top 12 QB, but even more than just Bryce being a viable streamer, it's more about at least making people in the Panther skill core usable.
Yes.
I do think that's what we're hoping for with Bryce Young. And what I'll say on Caleb Williams is, I guess fantasy managers really believe in him since he's the QB 12, but there's a lot of people who already feel like they've seen enough. It was not a good season by any stretch, but sometimes I deride Ben Johnson as maybe having a little too much Josh McDaniels energy, like way too much faith in his own abilities. But if Ben Johnson, the most sought after head coaching candidate in probably 2 or 3 years, decided he could hitch his wagon to Caleb Williams, it's a really good leading indicator. Like one of the most creative play calling minds in the NFL is literally, after deciding he couldn't coach Jaden Daniels, which again could be a negative sign, decided, yeah, this is where I want to be, is with Caleb Williams. We could maybe like not even be close to high enough in Caleb Williams is kind of where I'm going.
I agree. There's also
Ben Johnson believes in him. That's a great sign.
Yeah, there's also the maturity factor for Caleb. I saw a report the other day. So Caleb Williams didn't really know how to watch and dissect and analyze film coming into the pros. And I mean, a lot of guys don't. It's not just
because Caleb Williams has been probably not the best football player in any field he stepped on since the age of 5. Probably just the best athlete.
Right.
In basketball, baseball, it didn't matter.
But the Bears did not teach him that. They didn't treat him like a rookie, and I think he needed to be treated more like a rookie. I think that's what Ben Johnson's going to do here, is teach him how to be a pro, and that could go a long way for fantasy.
We're just about done. This could be our last question. Kind of a lower wattage question, but Nico said he's been waiting to ask it for a while.
All right.
So we're going to answer it. What is your opinion, Denny, on closing best ball drafts with the dreaded Russell Wilson and the forever underrated Darius Slayton, including by his own team, the New York Giants?
Yeah, right. Darius Slayton, who the Giants have not wanted since he arrived there, but is entering his 14th year in New York.
They can never stop paying. All right, just give him $14 million.
And Darius Slayton, who never is inefficient, is always a really solid. Yes, no, you're on to something. That is really interesting. If you get Malik Neighbors early, right, and you mix in a little Cam Scatterbo, and you get Russ late, and you throw in Darius Slayton as the guy who will go get those moon balls from Russ, you're cooking. You're cooking. This is good stuff, Nico.
No one has ever described getting 7th place harder than you just
did. You're at least 5th.
No, Denny with a 58-minute YouTube video, and here the best way to get 7th in your best ball draft.
Right. The thumbnail will be me
or the thumbnail is Darius Slayton.
Darius Slayton. I caught one week 14 long ball.
But Nico, thank you to your question. Thank you to everyone for the questions. We've had an extremely good time doing this live edition of the Rotoworld Football Show. We're going to be back with a regular edition of the Rotoworld Football Show on Thursday when we preview the AFC and NFC Northern divisions with our friend and colleague, Mr. Kyle Dvorak. Thank you so much for your participation today. This has been really fun in the middle of the summer. We don't have exact dates yet, but we're going to do a few more of these as the summer rolls along. So for Denny, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Thursday with our friend Kyle.